Hi. I'm making this video mostly because I've been thinking of making this video for 3 weeks. I've worked on a piece of fan art, we'll go over that. But hi, welcome to your non-sexist review of Obsession. I mostly want to talk through some thoughts of the film and kind of set up the tone. I'm Trinity, I like films, and I'm gay. Phaguts is a show where, ideally, my opinionated ass will get up here and gay judge films for your entertainment. The plan is for me to do fan art because I am an artist. I did fan art for this. I'll put a better picture of it, like, here, hopefully. There's gonna be a time lapse of that plane in the background, a la Subway Surfers. My Krita failed me and it didn't film the time lapse, so I wasn't able to get that done for you, so I do apologize. Yeah. I also tried, I want to make it a thing to do in this series to do fun makeup, because I never do, you know, like, make it themed, have it fun. Like, this is definitely a work in progress, because I don't know how I feel about this setup exactly. But whenever I tried, my initial plan was to do Nikki, like Nikki's, the fucking Uncanny Valley makeup, and to have that done, and I did it. Oh, let's hope that's not fucking up the audio. I did it, and it looked like this. And I decided that for the first, like, actual video that I put kind of semi-effort in, I don't want to look like that for, like, 30 minutes on the internet. So, here we are. I'm kind of making myself post this because done is better than perfect. Yay! Obsession. I saw Obsession, like everybody, a couple weeks ago. Everybody loved this fucking film, and it's an amazing film. I watched it in theaters with one of my friends, and afterwards we could not stop talking about it. I did really understand, like, why everybody likes this. I think it really captures the fear most women have, and it's obviously a careful what you wish for, but I think like the main thing that everybody points out makes this film popular is this fear that not all, but almost a rite of passage experience that a lot of women go through of your guy best friend sitting you down and being like, I have something to tell you, and it being very clear that you don't want him. And I know in the film it is ambiguous whether or not Nikki does want him, but I think a lot of women are reading it as she doesn't, because that is their lived experience. That's not the main thing that I want to talk about with this film, though, and I am jumping ahead of myself. Oh, I just kicked my camera. I had to get my notes. My notes. Wow. So, as we talked about this film, the main character isn't Nikki, though I've mentioned her multiple times. It is Bear. I will say throughout this, I'm going to assume that if you're watching a random niche internet video about Obsession, you've already seen the film. So I am going to keep the recap to a minimum. But as we know, Bear is the lead of this film. He is the main, almost antagonist of this film in his own story. The first little bit of the movie, what the setup is, God, sorry, I'm fat girl breathing. Fuck. God, okay. The setup of this film is, you know, we open with Bear kind of pretending to confess his feelings to Nikki, and we really quickly get that Bear is very much cowardly. He's very avoidant. He doesn't feel very comfortable telling Nikki about this. I think a big thing that, you know, kind of contributes to the catalyst of this movie, obviously, is his cowardness, but, you know, Nikki's quitting her job, and in the film, you know, he gets invited out, he goes and buys the One Wish Willow instead of getting her a replacement of the necklace that she would have wanted, and part of the reason why he's going out that night is because Nikki quit her job, and she's like, this is probably one of the last times we'll be able to see each other. With that being said, I do think it's interesting that that's kind of set up of this is urgent, this is kind of like Bear's last chance. I think this also really mirrors what a lot of people go through with crushes, where you let it go on too long, you don't ever tell them what you want out of them, and then you get these moments in life where you can finally tell them, and then you don't. And we kind of see this whenever Bear drops her off, and she asks if he likes her, and she says no, or he says no. And that's, whenever he makes his wish. A big thing that I want to talk about in this film is how anti-AI obsession is, in my opinion. This is a big thing that I noticed in the movie. One, I'm not just saying this to be special, though I don't want to reiterate what everybody else has said about the feminism and all that you can read in this film. I do still want to bring something new to the table, and I genuinely throughout this film really noticed, at least what I interpreted as, a lot of anti-AI themes that I think is really interesting. A lot of the way that Nikki functions in her possession from the jump really mirrors ChatGPT, and I also think it's interesting that we pose Bear in this kind of there is a gnat. Sorry. That we contrast Bear, and Bear clearly is somebody that's okay with chat. He's clearly somebody that is very passive in his own life and really doesn't take a lot of initiative with a creative, like Nikki. Nikki's a writer, and I think that's a really important detail whenever we think about this AI aspect. So after Nikki gets possessed, she goes back and forth of these things of like not really knowing what she wants, not really not what she wants, but not really knowing what she wants to do. She goes in between wanting to go home with Bear and then also wanting to wanting to go back to her house because she's really confused on why she's acting this way. Oh my goodness, I have to sneeze. And there's fucking that. God damn. I can't do anything. But she, is constantly going back and forth, which makes sense. She's being possessed. But I also think the way that Nikki's dialogue is written in these scenes is super interesting. I'm reading my notes. Throughout this, we established that, like, in this first scene, again, at the very, not super far into the movie, it is pretty early on established that Nikki in this state lies, and she lies a lot. A really big part in this scene, in this section, that really stuck out to me was Nikki being like, my cat died. And Bear being like, your cat didn't die, my cat died. And we see a lot of moments like that throughout the film where Nikki is constantly making comments and kind of getting things switched up the way that chat or an AI bot, whenever you mention something to it, as you prompt it more and as you talk to it more, it's falsely pulling information and it's getting it switched up. It's getting it confused. Another thing, if I remember correctly, and if I don't, I'm going to cut this part out. But another thing, if I remember correctly, is Bear had somebody in his life die. He had I don't know if it was his parent or his grandparent, but he had somebody important in his life die. And one of the first the big major lie that Nikki tells is that her dad is dying. And that's another example of how her mind being taken over by this thing cannot keep up with all of the information and where to put it. With all the information that she's getting it, she doesn't know what to do with that. Which we can also see this theme of AI kind of continue on throughout the film. Afterwards, she stays over. I also really appreciated whenever she goes over to his house and their kissing scene, they play Current Joys, if I think that's the right band. I meant to look it up and double check, but I'm 99% sure I'm right. I played it in the background. One, I just appreciate movies finally moving into an era that have actual music that fucking, not to sound annoying, but that Gen Z, people my age, listen to. And that it does set up that nostalgia, that like kind of romantic feeling that songs like that give us. I also really like how they have these setups of it being this love story and being this coming of age film with scenes like that it starts so slow and then hit you so abruptly, because it is Nikki coming into her body and being like, what the fuck? What the fuck is happening? I don't want that. I don't want that. You know? That's my brother. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. As we get further into this, again, this theme kind of repeats. Afterwards, Nikki does some fuck shit. In the morning, she wakes up. She's got the dead cat in a memorial. That's kind of what I did here. I had the dead cat, and I got the willow. Yeah. But she kind of has the dead cat set up in his kitchen. They go to work. It's a whole thing. Whatever. He initially is like, oh, she's crazy. I don't know what happened. They establish she's on Molly. She comes back. She's like, oh, I do have feelings for you. Something super interesting that they also do throughout this movie is constantly shrouding Nikki in darkness, to kind of establish that it isn't her, which is also super nice. I think something like that, there's one scene in particular that I'll throw a picture up of, where there's no, like, at least to my knowledge, no special effects makeup, nothing. It's her after they go to the party, skipping ahead quite a bit. After they go to the party that, you know, what's his face? Was his name like Chad? The dickhead man. They're all dickhead men, but like the real dickhead man. He's like, I don't want Nikki to come, whatever. They go. She bashes her head in with a fucking bottle. And they come back home. And they're arguing and she's begging. She's like, I can be Nikki. I can do this. The way that they have her smiling with her eyes huge and glossy and her in the darkness is so nice. It looks fake. It was really, really fucking good. It was really good. Anyway, going back. Whenever Bear sets this up, him and his friend, to think that Nikki's not in her right mind, she doesn't know what's going on, is whenever in my opinion, establish that Bear is taking advantage of Nikki. Obviously, it comes a little bit later in the film whenever he really knows that this isn't Nikki and isn't Nikki's doing. But clearly, he has an idea that what he is doing with Nikki, that she is in some type of crisis before we fully know that she's possessed by something. And we see this kind of play over and over again. Another thing with the AI kind ofness is that nobody views Nikki as a person in her own right. Even in this conversation, it's just like, oh, Nikki was high, you know, you didn't do anything with her, that'd be kind of fucked up, but like nobody really cares. Throughout the film, it's kind of reestablished how, you know, oh, we think Nikki is doing this to get back at you or to get back at Towhead over there because you know, they were hooking up and but then also combining this with Nikki's going through a crisis and it looks like you're taking advantage of her. There really is no care on either side. You can make the argument that, especially from the people that don't know what's happening, it looks like Nikki is abusing Bear. It looks like one of these people is being held against their will and being abused, and none of their friends really give a shit. They all just kind of judge her. I do think that this is very realistic. I really like this, that nobody is like trying to do an intervention. They're all just like, what you're doing is fucking weird, bro. Like, y'all gotta stop. Whenever in all reality, that somebody should have came in and should have been like, what the fuck is going on? Why is this happening? This is fucking weird. This kind of goes into, you know, again, the lack of agency. This is mostly with Nikki, of how she's kind of, without saying it, a lot of them, like Sarah and Towhead, do view Nikki as a whore. Not as deserving, but they view her, even though they're her friends, as somebody that would take advantage of Bear in this way. And they see Bear as just this innocent puppy. And though, yeah, I don't think it's wrong for Bear to have made the wish he didn't know it was real. But he is assaulting Nikki. We do see right after, very famously, I want to say one of the most notorious parts or infamous parts of this film is when they're at dinner and Bear confronts Nikki about her dad not dying and freaks the fuck out. He can tell because Nikki is lying. Nikki lies and freaks the fuck out. He can tell because she says the wish back to him that this isn't Nikki and that Nikki wouldn't do this. Nikki wouldn't act like that. And he still chooses to go home and have sex with her. Kind of going backward with this point, again, with the whole AI thing that I do want to talk about, is when we get after the scene where, you know, he's saying Nikki was on Molly, she was crazy, we do a montage. That's what happens. There's a montage of Nikki. Sorry, my cat is being really cute. Look at him. Oh, he's not doing it anymore. I'm sorry. Oh, shit. Fuck. I don't know if my camera's in the right place. We get a montage of Nikki and Bear doing relationship things. There's also a point where there's a generative AI meme or picture of the two of them. And again, I think this really hones in how Nikki isn't real. Bear is essentially dating a chatbot that is going to tell him whatever he wants to hear about himself. And I think it's really interesting that he has this mindset where, because we don't just have Nikki, we also have Sarah. We have these two very important women in his life that are artists. And he very clearly really likes AI. And he really likes stuff that's fake. He doesn't want to have to work for anything. He wants it handed. The dialogue that Nikki gives acts as a prompt for what she does, for what she wants. Another big part that me and my friend, whenever we watched this, talked about was at the party that I mentioned, was the Hansel and Gretel scene where she's reciting this poetry, and it talks about, it's clearly talking about her and Bear, but it has the like, you know, it's this weird sexual poem having to do with Hansel and Gretel, who were brother and sister. And you can interpret this multiple different ways. For the sake of my argument, I have a specific way. But a lot of people view this as, and my friend, me at the time, viewed this as her kind of part of her is making it clear that this isn't okay, that this is her brother, that she doesn't want to be doing this. I also see this, given the rest of the dialogue in the film, as an example of, again, her brain acting like a chatbot. And because she said like earlier in the film, or not earlier, but it was said that she had said to Sarah that she views Bear as a brother, that she viewed him as a brother, and that's an reason on why she wouldn't like him. What I think this could be is her getting this mixed up in this dialogue is, again, her brain recalling random memories and random things related to Bear and Nikki's psyche. But because she's fake, because she is essentially a chatbot, she cannot fully differentiate what is A, appropriate to say, and what B, makes sense in the context to say. That she can't understand nuance. We don't know if Nikki said that Bear was like a brother to her out of genuine saying that. You know, some people say that because just to avoid conversation about somebody liking them. You know, there's many reasons on why she could say that, and it doesn't have to mean that she doesn't have romantic feelings for Bear. At the end of the day, we'll never know that because she was replaced with an AI bot. And again, that thing is not going to be able to understand the nuance of why Nikki does the things that it does, or that she does. I had more evidence for this. I also think that, like, I think that the movie overall is a really good example of, like, overall, the movie is really good at kind of breaking down these concepts in a way that is digestible to men. An issue that I had with the film is it very clearly is written by a man, not in a bad way, but because I think a lot of the body horror that really could have been pushed in Obsession is a lot of the assault. It is the being in this body and not knowing what this person wants to do to you. I really think that they gave, I know that it is Bear's story, but I really think they didn't hone in enough on how terrifying of a situation this is also for Nikki. We don't get a lot of that, and I think if it was written by a woman, it would have had more of that, because it would have been more sympathetic and she would have been able to really understand that feeling. Where it's written by a man, though I know the director doesn't sympathize with Bear, I'm not saying that he does. I am just saying that I think some of that was overlooked. And I do think in some ways that's a good thing. I think FD said this, where he was like, this movie allows men, you can't fully villainize Bear, though he is a bad person, he is a rapist. You can't villainize him before that, because this film, I don't think he directly said this, but he was just saying that the film is a good way for men like this to self-reflect. And I do think it is. It's a cautionary tale. Like, as stories like this should work, it is a cautionary tale of, you know, be careful what you wish for. You don't always want that. And that we will never know if Bear wants Nikki. Like, if Nikki wants Bear. If Nikki wanted to be with Bear, we'll never know if Bear would have gotten a happy ending out of that. I think it's also interesting, again, with the just the way that Nikki, we talked about this, or a lot of people have talked about this, with the way that the film ends. This doesn't have to do with AI, but with the way that it ends, with leaving Nikki to clean up the mess, I also think that was such a good touch. It does suck. I think it is a good ending. It sucks as an ending, but it makes sense for the character that throughout this whole film, she has been suffering because of Bear, and that she will continue to suffer because of him. With the whole AI aspect of this, it was more so, it was less that I think that the film is like fully no AI, fully, like, not no AI, but fully like bad AI, bad movie. I think that there was just a lot of what seemed to be like negative feelings towards AI in this film, and that some of the ways that Nikki seemed to be written were based on what seems to be the director, or I don't know if he screen wrote this film as well, but what seems to be his opinion of AI. I think there's just so many little pieces. Like, again, I think a lot about the picture, like the scene of the two of them over Bear's phone looking at that picture. Like, it just doesn't feel right. I think that, again, it is kind of speaking to this, not just male loneliness, but like this heavy reliance on things that aren't real, non-real human connections to get a connection. But okay, I don't have much else to say. This isn't, I want to make these a little bit better in the future, but I honestly just needed, ooh, I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Why do I look like that on camera? So, though, I honestly want these to be a little bit better. I want to showcase my art, but I honestly was just trying to get a video out. Again, like I said, I've been thinking about this for weeks. And so I kind of just finally made myself sit down and record it so that it's done, so that I can say that I uploaded something and now it's done. Next week, I am doing Leviticus. I love that movie. I will be sitting down and doing a whole thing about Leviticus. I fucking love Leviticus. You don't understand how fucking annoying I'm gonna be about that movie. Anyway, I hope you liked this episode of Phaguts. Phaguts, not a slur. But I hope you at least kind of like this. They'll get better in the future. Thanks. I'm gonna go lay down in my bed and look at masked lesbians on TikTok. Bye.